Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter, and I'm excited to share this episode with you today. This one is with a new friend, a new connection, a YouTuber, and that is Dillon Holmes. He's the host of the YouTube channel, Well Your World. It's an online cooking show and also a place of resources and research and support and information about living a healthy life, specifically all focused around a whole food, plant-based, no added salt, oil, or sugar lifestyle. A lifestyle that I, subscribe to personally. And what Dillon is doing is he's creating this, online community, a place where people can come together and have a source of camaraderie and support. And I think that is absolutely crucial in our world today. And I like to believe that as these little online networks bubble up, these sort of things will translate into the real world, the world not online, the world in our life. And we talk about how we can use online resources and online community as support, but we also talk about translating that into the real world. So this is a great conversation with Dillon and how he's gotten into all things he's doing today concerning Well Your World. And if you're not already familiar with Well Your World, I'll certainly encourage you to go search on YouTube, Well Your World, and you'll find his channel, of course. And he's also got a Facebook community group that's a great source of support and information as well. So if you haven't already subscribed and rated and reviewed this channel, Alter Your Health, I would encourage you to do so. I'd be so grateful. And obviously also invite any feedback in the form of comments or ratings or reviews or anything like that. And let's just dive right into this one with Dillon Holmes. So yeah, Dillon, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today on the Alter Your Health podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excellent. So I don't know you that well. I've just, like I said, been introduced to a little bit of your work on your YouTube channel, some of the interviews you've conducted and whatnot. So how have you gotten into, where you're at in creating content and cooking and health and, holistic nutrition and stuff?
Well, I'll go even before that if you want. The story of me kind of getting on the internet was, well, I've always been pretty interested in health, but, the story, it sort of comes in phases. And every time you think you're healthy, you find out you're not, and then you make adjustments and you do better and better and better. And so I switched to a vegan diet. In fact, after reading the China study back in 2013, and thought I was like super healthy just because I'd gone vegan. And because in the China study, it doesn't really really just talks about animal protein, right? And so I thought, well, if I eliminate that, then everything's gonna be perfect. Well, nothing changed much by just getting rid of the animal protein, because I was eating nothing but vegan junk food and French fries, and I was a potato chip addict and everything. So, but then at the same time, I was getting really into juicing, just vegetable juicing. And, kind of like the Gerson method, if as a naturopathic doctor, you've probably heard of what they're doing, but, and have done forever. So I was juicing, but I was an unhealthy vegan. And then my mom actually had this high cholesterol scare. Actually, it's a funny story. I happened upon this dinner with Dr. Neil Barnard and Jason Wyrick, who I recently interviewed on my YouTube channel. And it was a PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is pushing for an end to animal testing. And it was this oil-free meal. And I thought to myself, why oil-free? I mean, it's vegan, that's healthy, that's the way. And so at the time, I was like totally blown away by what it could mean to, remove oil from the diet and eat a real, actual whole food diet instead of just a vegan diet. And so, but I sort of went over my head, and I a couple months later, my mom had this high cholesterol scare, and she didn't want to go on statins for the rest of her life. So we're like, Mom, that reminds me of this dinner we went to, and they were pushing this oil-free thing. Let me look at this. And so we ended up reading the Starch Solution, Dr. John McDougall's book. And so we got our blood tested at the beginning of this month. This was back in 2016. So I'd been vegan for 3 years without much, health changes. My cholesterol was still high. My blood pressure was high. I was getting chubby. And so we did this first month, and both of us, our cholesterol dropped 40 points in the first month just by eating whole food and eliminating oil. So I got rid of all the junk, all the booze, all the, everything. And we were just so blown away by the results that we started, telling everybody about it. We're like, well, we have this magic remedy. Obviously, you're going to want it, right? Extended family, friends, everybody. Well, it turns out they didn't. So we needed a new approach. And so we knew what was good for us. I mean, it took, in that first month, 10 days in, I knew I'm never going back to that old way of eating. And so I've been doing that ever since. But I was feeling really bottled up. Like I didn't have anybody to tell this great news to. And so, because nobody in my real life environment out here in Phoenix, that I knew of was doing this or would even be interested in doing it if I told them about it. And so I thought, well, I should make some videos about it. And maybe instead of me going to them, I can have this platform where others will come to me and that actually want the information. Because finding people out there that want to hear this is surprisingly challenging in your real life environment. And so I started making videos, and people started, digesting the content, and it was the perfect outlet for me because I like to communicate and lead people with, communicate the things that I've struggled to learn, like I said at the beginning, going through these phases, right? And trying to get people to skip a few of those phases and save themselves the time and energy and have the research sort of done for them. And so it's been working. I started by making the videos, and they were sort of just, I still to some extent fly by the seat of my pants, but I started doing it in a more organized fashion, making the cooking videos. I've kind of gravitated to making like one cooking video and one sort of explanation of health type of video every week. And then lately we've been doing a live YouTube show kind of Q&A where I can get into the weeds more for the people that are, the more diligent followers of the channel and everything. So more of a community building aspect of it, if you will. And so that's kind of the free content I was doing. And it picked up, and it started to take off, and it felt really good for me because I had somebody to talk to. And so I've been really happy with that. And then I started doing these other things that I can tell you about, like this live cooking show here in the kitchen and some other things. But
super cool. Yeah. What comes to me is you talked about how like the real world wasn't really digesting what you were offering, and you were having a hard time connecting with the local people in Phoenix, which is actually where I grew up. That's funny.
Really?
Yeah. So would have loved to know you while I was still there. But in any case, like we do have this alternative reality, so to speak, through the internet that's just building, and it's so awesome to use it and to leverage it for good, which is really what you're doing, because a lot of people obviously, use social media to like pick fights and stuff.
Yeah, right.
But there is obviously a light side of social media and YouTube and just community building through the internet, which is awesome. So
It certainly doesn't come naturally. I mean, like in my group, the Well Your World Facebook group, we have a Facebook group where we're all posting food. We post our successes, our wins. We post the challenges. When we get hit with social pressure and all these things, we have an outlet to talk about it and then get some support and encouragement and camaraderie from the rest of the people in the group. But a lot of kind of vegan groups are not a very respectful place. It's kind of like, if you're not 100% and you haven't been doing this for years and you don't have it all figured out, then we're going to come down on you.
Yeah.
And my group really is, and we've gone out of our way from the start to ensure that we're meeting people where they are. If you've come to the group, then to some extent you're curious, you're interested in making a change. Maybe you're not going to make it tomorrow, maybe you're not even close, but you want to start learning, you want to start watching people doing it right, to act as a model for you, and then you start to make these little changes yourself. And that is what I felt like was missing with our lifestyle way of eating, and just Facebook groups in general. They all seem to be like all or nothing angry places. And we go out of our way to be like really kind and welcoming and understanding that not everybody's going to be doing it right. Like, make sure your posts are promoting what is right, but it's okay if you're not there yourself yet. And I think that's where we're sort of different.
Yeah. I'm curious more about the impetus for making, doing all of this. You've got, like you showed me, your infrastructure with the videos and the cameras and the audio equipment. And like you've addressed this and taken this on like full on. So I'm curious, like, what was the real inspiration? Was it your physical health challenges and wanting to really dive into you, or was it that community building, piece of it?
Well, you could go really simple and just say, I want to do work that I actually like, and I want to get paid for it so that I don't have to do other work that I don't like at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And before I started doing this, for the last 10 years, I've had a local rooftop solar company where we've installed solar. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. And so I design and install systems on homes and office buildings and parking lot systems and all this stuff. But it was getting really old, pushing up against the anti-solar policy that we have some of our utility companies. I mean, the more solar that you install and you own yourself, the less power you're buying from a power plant. So there's inherently this battle between the utility companies and their monopoly system, that's the existing way that it works, and then this new solar thing that's taking business away from them. It's empowering individuals. It's democratizing a system that was previously, you had no choice but to buy somebody else's power from a dirty power plant. And so that was kind of my start into trying to do well with my background. And it was just such a battle. There's so much dark money. I mean, and the reason I'm getting into the details is because you can see the parallels, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the food industry and everything. And so I just got so sick of fighting. Like, I was showing up to our Public Utility Commission that regulates the monopoly, and you fight, but then these utilities can just buy their own regulators with dark money. So it was just like, I was getting really depressed, really bogged down. I was doing this great thing for the world, but on a very small scale. One, I wanted my scale to be bigger, and two, I didn't want to spend my life fighting anymore. So I decided that I could, and I've been really into health. Like I said, it was a slow process. And so I'm very passionate about it and digging into the weeds and figuring out, I always want to figure out the right way, the efficient way, and you want to have a bigger impact. And so I decided to start making these videos on the side, and it took probably a year and a half, and I'm still not like making big money on it yet. But I wanted to get away from doing the solar and into doing this new thing. And this new thing felt really good. And it was, people were enjoying it. I get comments all the time about how it's helped them get their life back in order, take control of their health. And so that's why, because I was able to apply my tech savvy and my interest in all that to create a studio on this residential scale that could, just this one-man show could get pushed out to everybody, and it would work, and it's working. And so it just kind of reinforced itself. I started it without any real agenda, knowing where it would go. And I've just been listening to people to figure out where the holes are. Like, how can I add the most amount of value to where it's going to help them as much as possible, but then it'll also help me so that I can start to make this my actual job, which is, sorry. So I want to, just so that I could help as many people as possible, but then also help myself by eventually getting paid for it some way. At first, I didn't know what that would ever be. And so now you can do the work that you love, you can support yourself financially doing it and have a really, big impact. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I gave it a shot. I saw other people doing it in a different way. I figured out where the holes were that I thought needed to be filled. And so here we are.
That's super cool. What's hitting me is just the nature of, your channel and everything. Well, your world, it is your world. Some people really focus in on, just the food that we're eating, just, how, just our physical nutrition. But what you're really doing and what it's coming from, I hear, is just really changing the world that you're living in. And obviously nutrition is a big component of it, but it's just one way in which you are welling your whole world, which is super, super cool and inspiring. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, when I started, I didn't know exactly which area of this would go strong. So, being vegan is about your own health, obviously. We've been talking about that. It's about the health of the environment, and it's about the ethical side and the treatment of animals. And I didn't know exactly if it would just be a mesh of those three things in Well Your World. I was also, my plan A at the time, Well Your World, was more of a long-term plan B because I thought it would take a lot longer to grow. So my first plan to get out of the solar industry was actually to build a little urban farm on my street. And I bought this lot 3 doors down from my house. And was building out a farm where I was going to grow clean, healthy food in a local scale. And then all of this started happening. And so, and I can see my impact being bigger with Well Your World than just growing food on the farm. But I was going to make videos of the farm, and I have made some videos of the farm and putting up this big solar system and all these things. But I just realized, okay, that this Well Your World stuff is happening a lot faster on the health specific side. So I pursued that further, and now the farm I might end up using for part of my operation to mix up some of these dry sauce mixes that I'm doing for people to act as a fast way to get food. So the plan keeps changing, but it was originally going to be me growing food as this local urban farmer and talking about it on the internet. But then my interest with health sort of was ready first, if you will, and took off. And so now the plan has changed, and it keeps morphing. It keeps changing with all these harebrained ideas, like, oh, let's do a cooking show a few months ago. And then that kind of took off and worked. So now I'm focusing more energy on that, where it's kind of just a shot in the dark.
Super cool. So, what I really appreciate, what I really appreciate is that I hope you don't take this as an insult in any way, but you're kind of like an average Joe kind of guy. And you're a working guy. You've got this, career. And I think a lot of people like myself, for sure, just kind of resonate with, who you are and what you're doing. And, you're not some movie star celebrity person yet, but you're just like a dude who people can relate with. And you're incorporating all of these wellness practices and understandings into your daily life. And it's like, oh yeah, I can do that too. So I think that's why I would assume one reason why a lot of people are resonating, and that's, super awesome. I'm just curious, do you have any background you said you have background in technology and solar and electrical engineering and stuff. What about cooking or farming? I mean, where have you gotten those skills along the way, or is it just kind of learn as you go?
No, it's been learn as you go. I'm not a very conventional learner. I didn't do well. Like, I got really sick of engineering because you got to learn with textbooks in class. But I found, and it's obviously gotten better as the internet has become a better and more reliable resource for knowledge. But I just kind of figured it out online, and reading books, like I said, it started the real health started with Dr. McDougall, but then that got into everything going on at like a True North Health Center, and fasting, and Furman, and Neil Barnard, and Dr. Clapper, and Dr. Doug Lyle, which is a huge part of this, is the psychology of it. And so, I know I don't have a background in farming. I started farming actually doing aquaponics in my backyard because a family friend of ours did it in his backyard, and I saw it and I thought, oh my gosh, you can grow food using 90% less water in the desert using a hydroponics or an aquaponics system. Aquaponics includes fish, captive fish. So I started with that, learned all about it, realized it wasn't working for me with the vegan side of it and the ethical side of it. So I stopped doing that. But that's kind of where I started to grow food, and I started to see that you can just create this. It's just science. You just figure out the system, and then you just do it over and over again. It's the same as coming into the kitchen and cooking. You make a recipe that you know is health promoting, and you just do it over and over again. And if you have 6 recipes that you eat, your type 2 diabetes will still go away. Even if you just eat rice and broccoli every day for 3 months. And so, but yeah, I grew up in a household where my mom cooked our meals, and we thought we were eating really healthy. But it was standard American fare, but it wasn't like buying Hamburger Helper and eating that. Like, it was scratch cooking, but it was still with oil and animal products. So it wasn't ideal, but at least I was able to learn from her the cooking techniques, general cooking techniques, which then were thrown upside down when you take oil out of the equation and you have to kind of figure it out again. But none of it's very challenging. And so, if I can just do the legwork, figure it out, and then package it into a video and push it out to the world and show you how easy it is, well, now I'm adding value. I'm getting to do the thing that I like to do, which is to solve little, system problems. Like, I really like operations and taking a system and then making it as efficient as possible. And I'm talking about this from like a work or like even a solar installation standpoint, and finding the cleanest, crispest, fastest, easiest, most cost-effective way of refining a process, and then telling people how to do it so that everybody else skips the process. And cooking in your kitchen is the same damn thing. And understanding the health and watching somebody succinctly explain it in a video instead of having to necessarily read through a whole book is another way to make it more efficient for busy people that don't have time, or maybe aren't as conscientious and don't care to necessarily get into the weeds as much. They just want to be told, this is the right way, prove it, dude, and okay, I'll do it. And if I can do that, that's a broad audience now. If I'm not just saying, you got to read these 12 books that I read in the past 6 months in order to be successful, they're not going to do it. So
what do you feel like is one of the best ways nowadays, being on YouTube and being with, having your videos that you produce, what do you feel is one of the best ways to capture people's attention and engage people?
Just make sure you're providing them with something that they want to know how to do, that they see you doing and it's working for you, and then they want to implement it in their own lives because they see that what you're doing, you may have all these fancy cameras and do all these things that aren't easily attainable by the average person, but what you're doing on the other side of the camera is, and taking an Instant Pot and throwing 5 cups of starches in there and then spending the rest of the day eating it, it takes 10 minutes. But I wouldn't have thought of it without somebody saying, hey, go do this thing. So I think just finding where people are doing it wrong, helping them to see that they're doing it wrong without telling them that they're idiots, and then finding a peaceful, relaxed, authentic way to show what you're doing in your own lifestyle, in your own day-to-day, that's working for you. It's making your cholesterol normalize. It's making your blood pressure normalize. It dropped all these pounds really, really fast. And people see that and they're like, yeah, I can do that. But, doing a low-carb diet and staying in ketosis all day and feeling like hell all day long every day, it's like you realize in a hurry who's right and who's wrong. It's hard because our way of eating is definitely not good news for a lot of people who enjoy some of the rich flavors of the standard American fare. But you realize I could have type 2 diabetes and neuropathy and you lose some toes, or I could just stop eating the garbage, deal with people judging me for not eating meat in a world of meat eaters, and then I'm healthy and I get to hang out with my kids and I get to wipe my own butt forever. And it's like, oh, let's do that.
Yeah, win-win. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I find a lot of people say, "Oh, you know, if I were to eat like you, I would blow up like a balloon or something with all like the carbohydrates." And it's like, but why am I not blowing up like a balloon? And a lot of people, even coming from science-based medical understanding of what's going on in the body, a lot of people are so hung up in what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they have such a hard time broadening their awareness and understanding of anything contrary to that.
I find if you can just get a person to question or to be open to maybe being wrong. It's the people that refuse to be wrong that are just never gonna make it come over to this side. But if you can find anybody who just wants to know the best that they can do for themselves, then there's a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
you just get them a little bit, just show them a little taste. Don't shove it down their throats. Maybe they're not ready. But if you can just send, and you can tell this in like 30 seconds of talking to a person, if they're going to be like interested or open, or if they're going to just be like, you're an idiot, stop. And then you just go.
And sometimes when people do have the response of you're an idiot, stop, they go home and they, they have a dream, or they, see something again and they think, oh, like Dillon told me this the other day, and maybe he's not a total psycho who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Happy cult. Yeah.
Cult. Yeah. So I'd like to ask you more questions, if that's all right, about the farming. It's something that I'm really intrigued in, just because I feel like one thing that is deficient in a lot of society and culture is having a connection with our food. And so how has that, I think you told me a little bit already of how you got into that. But what have been some learnings and obstacles, and how is it going, the whole urban farming thing in Phoenix, Arizona?
Well, I'm not growing food on this property. What I did was I started doing a lot of the infrastructure stuff. Like I wanted to put this solar system up because the tax credit for solar was going to end this year. So I sort of did a reverse of what I would recommend anyone do when they start a new business, which is do some business first, start growing the food, hone that in, and then start to use your profits to, do solar or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was in a time crunch, so I kind of flipped that on its head. And now here I am with the infrastructure in place, and I haven't actually started growing food. So the next step was going to be to actually grow food. But to answer your question, I guess, I've always had a very homestead kind of nature. Like if I can buy a block of tofu and I'm going to eat it, I ought to know how to make it and try that out and figure it out. Or if I want beans that haven't been brined in salt and canned with salt, or if I want salt-free tomatoes or whatever, why don't I try it myself? So I got really into canning and canning my own food, and then I got this freeze dryer, and then I was freeze drying my own food because I really like backpacking. And the freeze dried backpacking food that you can buy in the regular stores are all just full of salt and oil and animal products. So I got this home freeze dryer and I started making my own backpacking food. And I was like, man, then, the busy nights when you don't have time to cook, you'll go and take a thing of backpacking food and you'll eat it. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm probably not the only one that's having this problem. Maybe there's some kind of dried food product that is super, super clean that I could provide people with for the nights when they're busy. Not to be their main source of food. You need to go and cook and figure it out because you only have to learn this stuff one time. But there are still going to be times when you are traveling perhaps, or when you do want to do some camping, or when the kids are doing all these events and then you don't have time to cook and you just want to throw something together. So I started exploring that. That's a whole other topic, and I'm not answering your question about the farming, but what I'm saying is my farming interest stemmed from the same, like, wanting to figure out the roots, have that relationship with the food. If I'm buying canned beans and tomatoes and whatnot, I liked the idea of going back and understanding how to do it. And then gardening and growing your own food, to do whatever preservation or processing or eating or cooking with it that you can. It feels really good to sort of take on the whole life cycle of the process, I guess. And so I actually was gardening, doing the aquaponics thing in my backyard. That was like my pilot system, was a small system. And so I just started to see the system in a more commercial sized scale. And I thought, well, I could scale this up and it would grow food like a conveyor belt of food. And then I could, sell to local restaurants, because here in Phoenix, there is quite a bit of a push for local food and, the farm to table and all that. Mm-hmm. So I knew there'd be a good market for it. And so that's kind of why I went that direction. But I don't have a lot of experience growing the actual food on a farm scale or selling it. But one of the things I did in the interim was, and I'm still doing, is growing microgreens in an indoor controlled environment. So I don't have any up here to show you, but growing these trays of microgreens that I delivered to chefs on Friday. And that was going to be kind of like, test it out, find something that you can stick into that infrastructure that you built down the street at this urban farm, and then see where it goes. But now again, the plan is changing because, well, your world is taking off. And so now I'm probably going to scale down the whole microgreens thing because I don't need it in the same way. Perhaps there's somebody that will be able to take it on, or, take the knowledge that I've put together. But we'll see. My priority is well your world. And so, cool. What was your question?
Well, you answered it, just how you've gotten into the urban farming thing. So when do you intend on food going in the ground down the street or in the
I don't.
Oh, so that's not happening?
Well, what I want to do now is, so I'm shifting from being an urban farmer, because I can have way more impact doing what I'm currently doing. So what I'd like to do is, I don't know if you've heard of these co-working spaces where there'll be a commercial building and there's a co-working space where there may be a dozen, millennial run, usually, organizations, and they're all sort of not collaborating, but they're in this shared space, and they are kind of working in close proximity. And there's an open area. So maybe one person doing Well Your World, say, for example, I could have rent a little part of a desk in a co-working space and do my work there, so that it doesn't take over your entire house and kitchen. But I'm thinking of taking the urban farm and turning it into a co-working space for urban farmers that are wanting to get out, get started. Maybe they're working for an urban farm and they're ready to start a side jam on their own and start selling, growing themselves and understanding the whole system, as the sole person in this operation, and then grow it from there, and maybe leave their conventional urban farming job to run one of their own. So it's really I'm turning it into like providing a space for others to come in and collab with one another. Maybe I could have half a dozen farmers in there. It's like 2/3 of an acre. So there's enough space to do some cool stuff. And it could be a stepping off point for anybody who's wanting to get into the industry. And so I'm thinking of something going that direction. So I won't be the food person, but I will be sort of the admin to help hold down the fort.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's kind of like a community garden, but more professionally oriented.
Yep.
That's super.
And worst case, if that doesn't go, then I will find somebody who may want to do a community garden thing, but that's going to require some charitable funds of some sort, either from me or of course, the community members can pitch in too, but there's a little bit more upfront with building beds and irrigation and stuff like that, that
Mm-hmm.
I can't expect everybody to just throw a bunch of money at this thing and then be like, okay, well, it'll be ready in 6 months.
Yeah.
So there's some more that needs to go into that, but these are all options. If the lot just sits there and I use it to make my dry food mixes for the next year, no big deal. I'm not in an urgent need to find somebody to fill the space. So
Cool.
I'm kind of just taking it day by day and
yeah,
see what sticks.
it seems like a very exciting thing that is growing, and seems like the seeds are sprouting, no pun intended.
I think food could go a couple different ways. With climate change happening, it may be that growing food outside is going to become a bit of a scary thing. And I can see where, like the microgreens operation I have in this 240 square foot room in my basement, which could generate probably almost $100,000 a year for somebody, a family, if they wanted to grow it up to capacity. But I'm seeing how you're inside, you're completely climate controlled. I'm run totally on solar in this house. And so it's super efficient, but growing microgreens uses very little water. And because there's no soil to evaporate the water and soak down into the ground. And so it's like a super clean system. I'm seeing how it may make sense to grow food in these kinds of indoor warehouse type of systems that are kind of like hydroponic, really energy and water efficient, outside of the elements, which are going to become challenging, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So like part of me is like, and I think that could be done, like a mom and pop shop could grow food on an indoor scale like that. It doesn't have to be the Amazons of the world that are going to grow all of our food in huge commercial greenhouses, though I think that will happen to some extent, because not enough people are going to grow food on a local small scale to meet the demand of the world.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's really cool that you're showing the world that it is possible to grow microgreens in your basement. And I know personally, I'm inspired to learn more about how to do that and do that myself, because I really like how you weave the Starch Solution high carb thing and sprinkle some microgreens on top, because I think that one of from my perspective, one of the potential deficiencies, so to speak, in a starch-based diet is just micronutrients. And when you have microgreens on your starch, that, extreme nutrient density mixed with the nuts and bolts of a good, healthy, sustainable diet. So I
worry that saying starch-based diet shouldn't imply that you're not also starting every meal with a humongous salad.
Right.
And that's where there's a little bit of how Furman and McDougall go head to head about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there's no reason why you can't eat a starch-based diet. I mean, I get a lot of calories from starches. I have a really fast metabolism, and I can eat an entire Instant Pot of food. That's probably 6 pounds of starches in one meal. And it's nuts. And I couldn't do that by, only eating, I need a pretty strong percentage of my calories come from starch, but it shouldn't and doesn't mean that I'm not going to eat salads and also enjoy some nuts and seeds and all the G-bombs from Dr. Furman and the Daily Dozen from Dr. Greger and all these things. That it's got to be a mesh of everything. Totally. In order to be really well balanced.
I'm with you. I love blending, and I love how it seems like you're doing the same thing as blending the wisdom from our founding fathers, I like to say, with regard to nutritional science and stuff. And I think that's what a new generation is for, is to kind of integrate all of this knowledge and wisdom and to kind of make it applicable. And that being said, I do feel like when I say a starch-based diet, I mean the primary calories coming from starch. And that is certainly maybe the most efficient way of eating, specifically with regard to your personal budget. It's cheap food, eating starch and filling up on starch calories. And depending on individual biochemistry and these kind of things, it all depends on what, what's optimal for an individual. But
I've found that if the food you eat would have been pretty easily attainable by a medieval peasant, then you're probably eating the right food.
Yeah.
Starches, some basic greens, you know, but
Yeah.
not all of the nuts and science foods.
Totally. So maybe we could turn gears once again to your kitchen operation, your kitchen demonstrations, food preparation. What are some of your, I mean, I know because I've watched a couple of your recent videos, but what are some of your nuts and bolts in the kitchen in terms of daily nourishment and easy preparation and, you know, things that you just find yourself making on a regular basis?
Well, I wanted to try to show people how to cook without feeling like they need recipes. A lot of people that are switching to this way of eating get overwhelmed because everything that they know about eating is wrong, and so therefore now I've got to learn all this new stuff, and it's going to be really daunting and tedious, and I better get all these recipe books because if I'm not following a recipe, I'm not going to figure it out. So I wanted to push up against that, and I love the recipe books, and I love changing it up once in a while, and all the really delicious oil-free whole food cookbooks that are out there. And I'm going to put one out myself. I'm going to try to do it in a way that is a little different, which we can talk about. But I'm trying to apply a cooking method that is just throw things together, develop a liking for a few spices that are going to become your go-to spices, whatever they are, and then understand intuitively how much goes into this recipe and just do it. You need to measure every last thing. Maybe you do the first time, and then you can start to see, how easy it is. And so if I'm going to make my mac and cheese, and it's just saute an onion, throw in a bunch of spices, blend it up with a couple of potatoes. None of the amounts matter because it's going to taste the same anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then mix that up with some noodles and throw in some peas or some shelled edamame, and maybe toss in a can of tomatoes if you want that day, whatever. And then just eat it. Just make it not on the plate anymore. And then you're done. And then you can leave and go back to the things that you can be doing with your family and pursuing other avenues. But cooking, just once you've just figure out these basic things, it's just fast. It's just, play around with a knife a little bit, get comfortable with a knife so you can chop some things, and then just start to throw it together. Marinara. All you do is saute some onions and peppers and some Italian seasoning. If you want to get really simple, make it spicy with some crushed red pepper, saute that up, garlic, throw in some diced tomatoes that don't have a bunch of added salt, and it's sauce. And what do you do with the sauce? You just put it on whole wheat pasta. Or potatoes, same thing. Saute up peppers and onions, some no salt seasoning, add some veggie broth, throw in the potatoes, and it's done. There's nothing. You don't have to do fancy recipes for every meal. You don't have to make fancy cauliflower wings and all these attempts to reconstruct or rather replicate our old way of eating. When we all start, we want to make fries. We want to take the mandolin and slice really thin potatoes, and then put them in the magical microwave device that makes them crispy, that little ring that you can put out the potatoes on, or make oven baked potatoes like fries over and over, because you're trying to break these addictions that you have to these standard American foods that, like I had, and I needed to go through that period. But then you realize it's a lot faster if I just chop some stuff and eat it.
We are, yeah, you and me are
not worry
definitely
about trying to replicate the mouthfeel that I had.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go through this. I think that you start like, okay, recipes. What recipe am I going to do? How am I going to change it up? The food doesn't taste that great yet because your taste buds have to completely neuro-adapt to being real again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like looking for all this magic food, or you're playing with the soy curls because they taste like meat, or you're doing the salty seitan and you're trying to replicate, and you get the textured vegetable protein to put in your chili because it gives you that meaty mouthfeel. And then you realize I'm missing it here. Like, I don't have time today. It kind of just happens by accident. I feel like you're like, okay, today, normally I would make this recipe, but I don't have time for that crap. So I'm just going to do this thing. And then you're like, oh, that worked. And it was really fast. Tomorrow, maybe I'll do the same thing. And then it just sort of dominoes. And you're like, you've got your new way of cooking. And every once in a while, when you want to take something to a dinner party or a potluck or host or whatever, you'll do something fancier, you know. And in my cooking show, I'll do some of the more organized, fancy things. Like we made shepherd's pie, and we made enchiladas, and we made some party dips on the last one, or we made a pizza bar or a taco bar. You know, all these things can be done very easily. It's whole food, no oil, no added salt, sugar, whatever. And it just becomes really fast. And once you ingrain the basics, then you just apply it to what you fancy that day. Mm-hmm. And like, so I've been playing with one implementation of what I'm describing is having a vocabulary in your head of sauces. So my pico was like my number one sauce when I first started out. I'd heat up plain beans with nothing, and I'd pour a bunch of pico on top, and it was damn fine. And then I figured out the cheese sauce and realized, okay, the cheese sauce, now all I have to do is throw some potatoes back into the Instant Pot, maybe, or steam some broccoli, and then pour this healthy cheese sauce on top, and done. Or mix it with the noodles and you're done. So I'm trying to and you can put it on anything, kind of like Buddha bowl style, you know. Just have your fresh, non-starchy and starchy things, and you just cook them plain, or put a little something in it, whatever you want. And then flavor it up with a basic sauce that you've got memorized because you do it every week. And you can make enough to store in the fridge. You can have a week worth of sauces in the fridge, and then every day all you got to do is boil some lentils, steam some broccoli, steam some squash, and put some sauce on top, and get back to something else. And
totally. Yeah, what you're saying really resonates with me personally. I feel like when I'm in the kitchen, especially when I'm in the kitchen alone without my wife, it's just like, all right, what's easy, what's simple, what's like the quickest way to get that inside of me. And, you know, my wife brings another element. She's more of a creative, like, you know, let's make it pretty. Let's take out all the knives and measuring spoons and wa-di-da.
And there's a place for that.
Yeah.
There's totally a place for that. It's fun to do fun cooking. It's fun. I'm not saying cooking should just be a speed test and get in and get out always. But if you're cooking every meal that you eat every day, like I don't eat out except for maybe a couple times a month because somebody's pulled my arm or I feel obligated. Mm-hmm. But if left to my own, I'd probably eat the same 5 things every day or every week. But you know, you don't want to lose touch of cook. You can be an elegant cook and still cook this way. Like it doesn't have to be just bare bones peasant food, like I said. But you know, totally there's a place for getting fancy, and that's why I've got a whole bunch of recipe books that you can't see sitting over there that I refer to, and lots of good healthy chefs that I definitely make their stuff all the time. Yeah. But I'm cooking every meal and I need it to be fast because I can't it's not my job. And the people that watch me, they've got real lives. Like a lot of the reason people go out and eat is because it's just convenient. And yeah, it tastes good to their messed up taste buds and everything, but they need the time back. And we have to show them that you can maintain health with the same type of schedule that you're accustomed to for the most part.
That's what I really hear you doing, is breaking down all of the barriers that might lie between someone and making whatever necessary changes they need to, you know, maintain, sustain, and promote their health. Because I think a lot of people have it in their mind that it needs to be one way or another, and it needs to take a lot of time. And the fact of the matter is, no, an Instant Pot, which I don't even have one myself yet, but an Instant Pot and some cheesy sauce, which, gosh, that recipe that you have, I haven't tried your recipe, but I make a similar one. It's the simple pleasures like that, you know?
It's just onions and potatoes, well, nutritional yeast.
Yeah. So curious what you got up your sleeve for your cookbook, Dylan. Is it gonna be more of this um, lack of recipe and just more kind of like structural components of how to eat healthfully?
Yeah, I want it to be more of a picture book. But I want to do, so the one book I want to do first, excuse me, I'd like to have the sauces. So the first 10, 12, whatever recipes in the book are sauces. And yeah, there'll be amounts and stuff, but anybody who watches me make them knows I'm inventing those amounts to appease people that need it in order for it to be in a book. But really, if it was up to me, I would just put some cumin, some no salt seasoning, because you just figure out which ones you do lots of and which ones you do little of, and then you just do it. Anyway, I digress. What I want to do in the book is a list of like 10 or 12 sauces, figure them out, kind of memorize them, and they'll be easy enough so that you can, for the most part. And then the next part of the book is recipes that use the sauces. So I'll have cheese sauce, but then I'll have potatoes, broccoli with cheese sauce. Then I'll have whole wheat pasta, peas, some chopped up cherry tomatoes, cheese sauce. And then the other one could be this quinoa bake thing that I like to do, where you mix up cooked quinoa with the cheese sauce and black beans and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then you can put some breadcrumbs on top or something, and then throw it in the oven. And there's another thing to do with the exact same recipe. So it becomes more of an idea book of ideas for what you can do with the sauces, but by no means can you only do these three things with that sauce. Like, you could do anything in the world with that sauce.
Yeah, I really like that kind of concept. It inspires people to think outside the box, so to speak, rather than just like, read down the list and put things in a bowl.
Well,
Yeah.
you start to feel like this one recipe. If you're relying on a recipe book, a conventional recipe book, you get stuck thinking this recipe is just this thing. But then you're like, oh wait, that curry sauce could be used to make chana masala with garbanzos, but it could also be like an aloo gobi with potatoes and cauliflower. But then you could also take that same sauce and mix it with some cooked brown rice and sauteed veggies and make like a biryani type of thing with it. And they're the same thing. But if you're just getting caught up on one recipe, you're not understanding the pieces that are going into it.
And good thing we just had this conversation after I finished breakfast, because like I'd be like, all right, get me into the kitchen. I'm gonna make all of these things that you're rattling off right now. Well, I think that's a great way to go about it in terms of the recipe book. Piecing sauce. Well, first of all, sauces are the most important part of any meal. Like, let's face it. I hear people tell me all the time, like, well, what are you gonna put on that? And it's like, a yummy sauce, of course. You got to make a yummy sauce. And
right.
So yeah, having your list of yummy go-to sauces is for sure important.
Cool.
Well, in addition to your yummy sauces, what do you think are some things that people could benefit from bringing into their life, into their plate, onto their plates, into their kitchen? What are some things in the kitchen that you think people are missing out in terms of SOS-free cooking, or just, healthy vegan recipes and stuff?
I don't think anything's missing. I think we have access to all of it. Maybe some of us need a go-to shopping list with these little ideas that, something that says, hey, this week I've got 5, 6, 7, whatever dinners, and 3 of them are going to be this one thing. I'll do something fancy on the weekend, maybe, or not. And you just kind of take it back now, reverse it. Like, you know your go-to recipes. Now you figure out what you need to buy for the week, and it's pretty basic, and you just do it every week, and it's done. You never have to think about this ever again until you want to change up your recipes a little bit, but your shopping list still probably isn't going to change much. And so there's nothing we're missing. You can make desserts if you're not avoiding dates and things that are a little bit higher in calorie density that are sweet. Then you can make all the desserts you could want that are healthy and make you feel well after, instead of feeling like hell. And it just goes. And so where I found another hole was the asking people to cook every night. Not everybody likes to do food prep, because it's just, I don't actually do that much big batch food prep. There'll be a week when I do, and then there'll be most weeks when I don't, because I just don't, I don't know, just I don't do it. Mm-hmm. And so people need a way to be able to not have to cook every meal. Even though I've made the meals, I think, as easy and fast as possible, I found that there were some other situations where we needed something else, like when you travel and you're not going to take all your spices and all these, you just need something really fast to make. So maybe you're going to travel, you're going to go to the local grocery store, and you're going to buy some bulk starches, and then some greens and some non-starchy, but you're not going to want to mess around with blending a sauce and all this stuff. So I've been making this dry cheese sauce mix, which is just a dry version of my cheese sauce. I'll tell you how to make it, but if you don't have time to make it, you could buy it in a bag where you just add boiling water and mix it together. And that would work for the nights and then you just boil some pasta and you've got a meal. And you still need to get your greens and all these things, but that's easy. But the same thing could be done with like some dressings. I could try to make like a SOS free dried, just add a little bit of water or some soy milk or water with an avocado and blend it up, and you've got something fast. So I launched about a month ago this dried cheese sauce mix, and people have been buying it like crazy. It's been a really intense month trying to keep up. I'm not caught up, but after this week, I hope to be.
So it's dehydrated potato sauce stuff.
It's got the dried potato, like potato flakes that are conventionally used to make like mashed potatoes out of like freeze dried potato type of thing, and nooch and spices. And all you do is add boiling water and blend it together, and you just pour it on your pasta or on your potatoes or on your cauliflower or broccoli, and you're done.
Brilliant.
So I'm trying to see if, I'm not trying to sell a potion here. Mm-hmm. This is all something you can produce this on your own. I have videos outlining it. Make the sauce yourself.
No trademark.
Scratch.
Yeah.
But if you want to buy it in a dry form, for travel or for the nights you don't have time or whatever it is, then here's this thing you can do a couple nights a week if it helps. And then maybe eventually I'll have a few other sauces, and then maybe there'll be some freeze-dried actual whole meals that have the beans and the veggies and stuff like that and freeze-dried. But that's a little more challenging. We'll see where it takes us.
Man,
but
Dillon,
it's been popular enough so far.
Yeah. You've got a lot of things up your sleeve, a lot of things coming through you, and it's really exciting. I'm glad to connect with what you're doing and what you're continuing to offer the world. It's exciting stuff. And like I said, if only I knew you when I was growing up in Phoenix. Although when I was growing up in Phoenix, I wasn't a whole food, plant-based kind of guy either.
No, me neither.
But we all come into it in our own ways. So how can people connect with you and what you're doing beyond? Are you in social media and in the world beyond your YouTube channel and stuff?
Well, we have the Facebook group, which is just facebook.com/groups/wellyourworld. And then I've got the YouTube channel. Those are really the two main avenues.
Cool.
And then check out the website if you want to learn about the cooking show that I do. So the cooking show, the only thing different about it is we're live, and I've got people talking to me in my ears like you are, and we're interacting. So instead of it being like my live YouTube show where we have a chat box and I'm just sitting here talking and reading people's comments, when you're cooking, you can't really do that unless I get somebody else to do it with me. That's reading the comments. So in the live show that we do every other weekend, people are in the Zoom conference room like we are now, and they're able to actually stop me and say, hey, well, what do you do when this happens? Or show me how to chop up that onion because, I don't know how, or whatever they ask. We just take it where it takes us. The last one, we had a nice long conversation about exercise and calories, and that ended up being kind of the theme of the show. But we just go into it with, I plan on making a certain, like we did 3 holiday dips for people to take with them to holiday parties. And so then everybody just kind of sends in some questions, and while I'm chopping and cooking, we're talking about the things that they're wondering about. And I get a little more personal because it's a much smaller audience and it's a closed down rather than like YouTube, which everybody in the world can see. And so we just hang out, really.
Yeah, love that. It comes back to this idea of creating your community that you were lacking in Phoenix, and once again, you used the word earlier, like real world. The real world is such and such, but this, alternative reality is, exists. And I love how you're once again taking advantage of it and really cultivating a community within this alternative techno reality. And, I think it's real enough,
The real reason I started with the group is because so many people go through such a hard time transitioning to this way of life. And if you have no one to talk to about, and the only people in your life are the ones that are judging you for this weirdness that you're exhibiting every day, then we're not connecting properly. And it's really hard when you're the odd one out. And so the internet has allowed us to come together and fill that emptiness, and then we can still go back out into the real world with everybody else who thinks we're crazy and get along just fine. But it was meant to be a community, a place where people can feel like they're not so alone. A lot of people in the group are in totally rural environments where it's just greasy spoon dining and nobody is doing it like them. And so they need somebody to make them feel like they're a part of a clan. And so we've got our tribe, and it works really well, and they still carry on and get along with everybody in their real life world. It's just that they don't feel like they need to talk about all this stuff because they're able to talk about it somewhere else. So they're not feeling like they're all bottled up. And that's what I was feeling. So I created it, and it's working for me as a consumer of the content as it is for everybody else. I'm getting as much out of this as I'm trying to provide for others, because I don't have anybody really in my world aside from my immediate family members that so fortunately do it the same way I do, because like my mom and I, how we did it together and stuff, and now my dad does it too. So I didn't have anybody to talk to about this or go to, so I needed it. And that's the name of the game. So.
Super rad. Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time, Dillon. And for listeners, of course, tune in to Well Your World. All sorts of great stuff coming all the time. And peace and love. Until next time.
Right back. Thank you.